me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The conditioned souls within the clutches of illusory energy are all anxious to attain peace in the material world, but they do not know the formula for peace, which is explained in this part of the Bhagavad Gita. The greatest peace formula is simply this: Lord Krishna is the beneficiary in all human activities. Men should offer everything to the transcendental service of the Lord, because He is the proprietor of all planets and the demigods thereon. No one is greater than He. He is greater than the greatest of the demigods, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. In the Vedas, Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.7, the Supreme Lord is described as Tam Ishwaranam Paramam Maheshwaram. Under the spell of illusion, living entities are trying to be lords of all they survey, but actually they are dominated by the material energy of the Lord. The Lord is the master of material nature, and the conditioned souls are under the stringent rules of material nature. Unless one understands these bare facts, it is not possible to achieve peace in the world, either individually or collectively. This is the sense of Krishna consciousness. Lord Krishna is the supreme predominator, and all living entities, including the great demigods, are his subordinates. One can attain perfect peace only in complete Krishna consciousness. This fifth chapter is a practical explanation of Krishna consciousness, generally known as Karma Yoga. The question of mental speculation as to how Karma Yoga can give liberation is answered therewith. To work in Krishna consciousness is to work with complete knowledge of the Lord as the predominator. Such work is not different from transcendental knowledge. Direct Krishna consciousness is Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga is a path leading to Bhakti Yoga. Krishna consciousness means to work in full knowledge of one's relationship with the Supreme Absolute, and the perfection of this consciousness is full knowledge of Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A pure soul is the eternal servant of God as his fragmental part and parcel. He comes into contact with Maya, illusion, due to the desire to lord it over Maya, and that is the cause of his many sufferings. As long as he is in contact with matter, he has to execute work in terms of material necessities. Krishna consciousness, however, brings one into spiritual life even while one is within the jurisdiction of matter, for it is an arousing of spiritual existence by practice in the material world. The more one is advanced, the more he is freed from the clutches of matter. The Lord is not partial towards anyone. Everything depends on one's practical performance of duties in Krishna consciousness, which helps one control the senses in every respect and conquer the influence of the desire and anger. And one who stands fast in Krishna consciousness, controlling the above-mentioned passions, remains factually in the transcendental stage, or Brahma Nirvana. The eightfold yoga mysticism is automatically practiced in Krishna consciousness because the ultimate purpose is served. There is a gradual process of elevation in the practice of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. But these only preface perfection by devotional service, which alone can award peace to the human being. It is the highest perfection of life. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the fifth chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of Karma Yoga, or action in Krishna consciousness. I'll chant a few prayers now before I begin this verse. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaf Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagar Jatam Sahagana Raguna Athan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam Nyatva Mam Shantim Richati. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So the title of today's lecture is individual and collective peace in 2 lines. Just 2 lines. So why is this 2 lines? Well, it looks like 4 lines, but in actuality, in Sanskrit, the first 2 lines is 1 line, and the second 2 lines is another line. And within these 2 lines contains more philosophy, more knowledge, especially more knowledge that can be found in an entire library, or in the most famous libraries of this world. Just these 2 lines. If one understands just this one verse of the Bhagavad Gita, one can achieve full perfection. Just this one verse. And Srila Prabhupada, the author of this book, the commentator of this Bhagavad Gita, he explains the entire philosophy of Krishna consciousness, the entire Vedic knowledge, in just these 2 paragraphs that we just read. So this verse, Srila Prabhupada often called it as the peace formula. He called it as the peace formula because in this verse contains the root cause of, from this verse we can understand the root cause of all our problems. And by understanding the root cause of all our problems, we need not become depressed, but rather by learning the root cause of all our problems, we can become liberated. We can actually become happy. We can become free, like as they say, right? So the verse, what does the verse say? A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. So there's a couple of characteristics regarding God, supreme, the supreme personality of Godhead, the source of everything, the ultimate truth. First off, the Supreme Lord is the ultimate beneficiary, meaning Bhoktaram Yajna Sapasam. He is the ultimate enjoyer. The illusion that we have in this world as we come into this world. So we're small living entities associated with matter. And what are we trying to do in this world? It is said that, Krishna says in another part of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, what is that? Mamaivamso jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manashastani indriyani prakritistani karshati. That the living entities were spiritual sparks. We're not this body, we're spiritual sparks. We are of the same quality, we are of the same characteristic, we are of the same type as the Supreme Lord who is being referred to in this purport. It is not that we are completely different. We are of the same quality. We're not of the same quantity, but we're of the same quality. And we're spiritual sparks, whereas he is the complete spiritual whole. And what is the characteristic of these spiritual sparks? We spiritual sparks, we individual souls which occupy these bodies, we are struggling with our mind and senses. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Manashastani indriyani, we are struggling with our mind and senses. Why are we struggling with our mind and senses? Prakriti sthani karshati, because we are trying to control material nature. We are trying to control this world in our own individual capacities. And by trying to control this world, by trying to mold this world, and what does that mean? It means we want to shape this world according to our desires, right? For instance, Why did we invent air conditioning? Because we don't like the way the weather works. You know, now animals, they live the way the weather works. I was just talking to Ethan this morning, and I mean, all of you might remember this cold snap that happened, in late December last year, where temperatures, at least here in Atlanta, dropped to like almost 15 degrees or even lower in some places, and the wind chill was even worse. So, but I mean, I was just telling him that I didn't see any of the squirrels or pigeons at least in our property, or any of the raccoons or anything, like, have some mass extinction because there was like freezing temperature. Hey, they live in Atlanta, Georgia. Like, everybody's, I'm from Atlanta. I'm not used to this kind of cold. Well, the raccoons aren't used to it, and the squirrels aren't used to it either. But they didn't die. Now, of course, that I'm not proposing that we all should have just stood outside in the cold, But the point is, especially in the human form of life, we have this tendency where we want to change material nature. We want to change the world according to how we think it should function, right? And scientists have all these kind of like really outlandish proposals, for instance, of covering releasing some kind of aerosols in the air that somehow blocks out some portion of the sunlight so that you could cool the world and reverse global warming and all this kind of. How do we come up with these kind of ideas? Because we have this tendency to control material nature. And if we observe our individual activities, we will notice that we're also doing this to some extent, Like a person is a master in their house. They want everything in their house to work the way they want it to work. Therefore, when something breaks, we get a little upset. Although, do we know that an AC would break eventually, or a car breaks down and it's just, but why do we get upset with it? Why do we get upset even though we know a car is going to get broken down? Yes. Inconvenience, that's true. And that inconvenience comes from the nature that we want things to function the way we would like them to function. Now, even though we do understand that inconvenience is kind of, it's part and parcel of life. There is some inconvenience that we have to go through, but still, we don't like it. We don't want it. Like, do we know that, yes, I have this body, so someday I'm gonna always, there will be some day when I might fall sick and then I'll recover and things like that. We know that. But then every time we fall sick, we don't, I just felt sick, it's no big deal. No, it is a big deal when you fall sick. Every time you fall sick, even if you may fall sick with the same thing that happened to you, like, when we had COVID doing the rounds, some of us got like, once, then second, then some unfortunate people got it the third time. Every time you got it, it wasn't like, I've already done that, I've already seen it. No, it's an inconvenience, and it's still like, it really makes you feel like, crap. So there is this tendency that we have to control material nature. Now, the only way we can tolerate inconveniences life is when we understand who's actually in control. Now, when we fail to understand who's actually in control, what happens is we don't know the limits of where our control is. It doesn't mean we don't have to control it. We have nothing to do, right? It doesn't mean that we cannot try to function our life in a way that's considered to be regulated and things like that. No, that's not the proposal here. But the point is, when we don't understand who is the ultimate benefactor and who is the ultimate controller of this world, then we don't know where our limits go. And then what we do is we play God. When we play God, when we try to play God, the way it actually comes off is actually we're being very selfish. Because we didn't create everything. We didn't create, just like, okay, and this is not just an individualistic thing. It can be a collective thing. One collective race can think, listen, we have to survive. Our race is more important. And so, well, the other race has got to cooperate with our desire. If they cooperate with our desire, they're our friends. If they don't cooperate with our desire, we're going to declare war and bomb their country. Because you know what? Why do they need to live anyways? Same goes with animals. Foolishly thinking that certain species of animals can be subjugated and tortured in inhuman ways for us to survive. So it's this tendency, without understanding who is the actual benefactor, who is the actual maintainer, who is the actual creator of this world. And when we understand that, and the reason why people don't like to do that is because then that means they have to curb some of that selfish desire. And they don't like it because they want to try to enjoy as much as they can. They don't want to have any tabs. But the problem is they fail to understand that in the material sphere, even if you say, I'm going to break all the rules, I don't care about anyone, I don't care about anything, I'm just going to live my life, you can't. Because you know what? Because you didn't create everything. You will become frustrated. You will become frustrated. Because the laws of because if we are so much intelligence, if we're so intelligent, then imagine the source of all intelligence. Krishna is intelligence. He is the source of all intelligence. He is the most intelligent. And he sits in everyone's heart. This is the other thing. God is, he's omnipresent. He's everywhere. So the Bhagavad Gita explains that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is present in everyone and everything as the super soul. And he understands us perfectly. But we're the ones who don't understand him. This human form of life is meant for us to understand him. When we understand him, when we take that endeavor to understand him, we will be able to achieve success in all spheres of human existence: social, environmental, political, economical, individual, because everything comes from him. When we fail to understand that, when we fail to understand that he is the ultimate enjoyer. Now, again, the beauty of reading Bhagavad Gita is that none of this is vague information. Right? In Bhagavad Gita, it is not that, okay, so he's the enjoyer, but how does this material world function? Well, that information is given in Bhagavad Gita also. We can perfectly understand how this material world functions. What is the use of understanding what is the use of understanding how this material world functions? We'll learn how to live in it. We'll learn how to live in it without making a mess of our life. Because we are here right now. And as much as the material world seems in many ways chaotic, it sounds like, well, why are there natural disasters? What kind of a God would create natural disasters? There's actually order to all the chaos. There's order to all the chaos through the laws of material nature. And those laws of material nature are called karma. So this karma is something that, and this is also something we need to understand from this verse, that it said it's the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. Some people have difficulty in understanding how God could be a well-wisher when so many people are born poor. How is God a well-wisher? Some people, some religions don't have any problem in stating that, well, yeah, we're the favored, chosen people, and all of you, well, too bad. You can serve us. That's a good proposal, we think. Doesn't sound like a very well-wishing God or somebody who's equal. If the philosophy is that, if you don't know Jesus, you're going to go to hell, but then God puts people on planet, sorry, not planets, but in countries and continents where people never heard of Jesus. Generations of them never heard of Jesus. So it seems like they're all destined to go to hell and burn forever. Seems like the population of hell will grows much faster. There's a lot more people in hell than there is in heaven. Doesn't sound like a very well-wishing God. Even though you may understand that, yes, He is the enjoyer. But in Bhagavad Gita, we're not presented with that kind of a vague understanding, with that kind of an understanding where things don't actually add up. Bhagavad Gita is a text where one who is intelligent, one who's inquisitive, one who really wants to understand the truth, he can find it here. He can find it. In fact, he will find more than what he can even imagine of asking. There's so much more information in Bhagavad Gita. So, the laws of karma, reincarnation is a fact. And reincarnation is how you explain how different living entities are born in different species of life, not just being born as poor, but also being born as an elephant or a chimpanzee or a hippopotamus or whatever that may be. This is because of karma, karmic activities. We perform certain activities, we develop certain desires, depending on our karma, depending on our desires, depending on the good activities we performed and the bad activities we performed, we are given a form of life to enjoy and suffer the results of our actions. Both enjoying and suffering. Both are there. So, in that way, Krishna is the well-wisher, because He's fulfilling our desire. Now, if we turn our desire, we understand how all this works, and we understand, well, I'm not actually the controller. Now, I could be, I could look. Somebody was telling me, I asked someone, what is your ultimate desire? My ultimate desire is I want to be born as a squirrel. I was shocked. No, I couldn't really believe it. And he was like, well, yeah, I look at squirrels every day and they're happy. They're much happier than me. I want to live like a squirrel. And this is a real incident. Now, he will get that desire. He will be fulfilled. He will be able to be born as a squirrel, for sure. He may not get to decide which country he's born as a squirrel. That depends on how he lived his life here as a human being and how long he gets to live, whether he's the master of all the squirrels. Even among animals, you have different, there's what head honcho in the tribe, and the others like just being pushed around, or something like this. And this is all there. And that he may not decide. He may not get to decide. He may not get to decide whether, sometimes you could be born as a pet squirrel and then some millionaire will leave all his wealth to you. Great, but you probably never realize that you have all that wealth. You don't have that intelligence to understand. So, the Supreme Lord is everyone's well-wisher in the sense that He fulfills all of these desires according to our qualification. Now, if we understand and if we change our desire to understanding that actually I need to understand what is Krishna's desire, because He's created this whole world just like somebody who creates a particular product. Okay, they create a phone. They create it with certain purposes in mind. I could use, so there's a tripod. This tripod's long, and it's nice. It's nice and long. But its purpose, there's a purpose to it. The purpose is that this tripod is meant to hold a video recording device or a photography device or whatever, But you could take this and think, and if you probably go and give this to, maybe some tribal person, and there are, tribes still living in jungles and part of this world, and you probably go and give it to them, they probably would think that this is a nice weapon. I could take this, I could elongate it even further than what I could probably elongate it and go and beat somebody, or use it to play drums, right? You can do that with it, but it might not be as effective. Or you could use it to stir up a pot of soup. You can stir with it, but it might not be the best thing because maybe it has some stuff that shouldn't go into our digestion system. So when there is a purpose to certain things, and when you don't use a product according to the purpose that it's given, then what's something that's expected to happen? Okay, yeah, it could break, but what else? We won't get the desired results. Because we won't get the desired results, what does that cause? Causes frustration. Right? This material world has been created. It did not come from a big bang. It is the most absurd thing that someone could come up. Maybe, I don't know how much they got drunk to come up with something as ridiculous as this, that there was a big bang and everything happened because of chance. Something happens because of chance is like saying you don't know how it happened. That's it. And they can create as many museums as they want about it, but it does not make any sense. There is not a single thing in this world, there is not a single example where you blow up a building and you produce, 4 extra buildings or something outlandish. It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. While there are certain things that may seem chaotic, such as natural disasters, it is a fact that there are so many things that have been perfectly tuned in this world for life to exist. Perfectly tuned. And if it was just even like one value, one digit, this way, that way, plus or minus, things would go off. So this universe has been created. And therefore, it is our duty, because we're living in this universe, it is our duty to understand who the Creator is, what is the purpose of this creation. And through that, we will understand what is the purpose of our life. And when we understand what is the purpose of our life, we become peaceful. We attain peace from the pangs of material miseries because we no longer become frustrated, because we know exactly what is happening. And we know how to live our life. When we understand that Krishna is the supreme beneficiary, He's the supreme benefactor, He's the Lord of all the planets and the demigods, then we engage our life in serving Him, but we understand that by serving Him, we become happy. We become content because the Supreme Lord is not... See, sometimes, when this word master and servant is used, it conjures up this image of a slave and a master. But it's not like that. For instance, a dog may have an owner, but it's not, and it is true. The dog, and so the owner is the owner of the dog. But still, it's not that the owner is trying to subject that dog to some kind of inhuman kind of like treatment. But rather there is a relationship that is enjoyed between the dog and its master. And while the underlying theme is that the dog does attempt to please its master in whatever way it can, or whatever way it thinks it must can, ultimately it is a relationship of love. And in that relationship of love, not only does the dog feel happy, the master also feels happy. So Krishna towards us is just the same thing like a child to a parent. A child to a parent, yes, the child has to listen to the parent. I mean, it's just, when the parent says don't go and pick someone else's bag up, then the child has to listen. Otherwise it's going to get grounded, is going to get in trouble. But it is a relationship of love. It is not a relationship of slavery. And that is the kind of relationship we enjoy with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But we have forgotten that relationship and we're acting like orphans in this world. But we're not actually orphans. We're not orphans. Krishna is the most intelligent. The way he has designed this world, it is perfect. It is a perfect arrangement to remind us of our original position. We have forgotten that position. And this world is arranged in such a way that after enough chances, we are induced to think about these things. Not forced, because love cannot be forced. God does not want that forced love from us. Krishna does not want that forced love. Okay, you want to do what you want to do it. You think you'll be happy if you become the president of the United States of America? Try it. See if you're happy. You feel happy you'll become a squirrel? Okay, go ahead. Okay, I want to do this, I want to do that. But ultimately, one who becomes intelligent, once he starts asking questions. Therefore, this is the first aphorism of Vedanta. The first aphorism of the Vedanta Sutra is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now is the time to inquire about Brahman. Now. Now means what? Whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, whether you're, young, old, whether you're, Indian, American, Russian, whatever. Whatever you may think, whether you think you're very educated, whether you think you're very illiterate. Now is the time to inquire about these things. Because by inquiry, we actually become free. What do we become free of? We become free of this frustration that brings us down. It feels like it's containing us. But that is because of our own foolishness. So Srila Prabhupada, he goes over this purport. He says that, they do not know. People are very anxious to attain peace, but they do not know the formula for peace. And the formula is this. Lord Krishna is the beneficiary in all human activities. Men should offer everything to the transcendental service of the Lord because he is the proprietor of all planets and demigods therein. No one is greater than he. So the point is that in the animal form of life, this is not expected. Animals are not expected to understand this. And they're not punished for not understanding it either. In fact, they're given all the tools for their survival without having to get debt. This is a big thing. I was again speaking all this to Ethan, so I'm repeating a lot of the stuff that I just said. We have to go through debt. Can you believe it? Animals don't have to go through debt. They don't even know what debt is. And they still survive. They're provided for. That means, so if Krishna, if God can provide what is required for all these species, there are so many millions of species. And in those millions of species, there are billions of living entities. There are billions of animals and plants, and they're all living. They're all being provided for until we, the most intelligent species of the world, go and put our nose into things and ruin their life and our lives. They're provided. If they're all being provided for, how do we feel that our needs are not being provided? It is because we are not acting according to the purpose of human life, which is to inquire about the supreme absolute truth. It is to make relevant inquiries. It is to become Krishna conscious. Krishna conscious means to become conscious of Krishna, God, as the benefactor, as the ultimate, enjoyer, as the ultimate well-wisher. Understanding our subordinate position, but understanding that subordination is not a subordination of slavery, but actually a position of love where we can be cared for, we are protected, we're provided, because actually we are not the creator. And all our needs can be provided for. When we surrender to this verse of the Bhagavad Gita, and This is what it means to become a devotee of Krishna. It means to become devoted. When you become devoted to something, that means that defines your existence. It is now a characteristic and feature of your life. A devotee is one whose primary characteristic and feature of life is that he is always conscious of Krishna. He's always conscious that he is a servant of Krishna, and he acts accordingly. And that means he's always conscious of how this material world functions. And this is the whole purpose of Bhagavad Gita. Right? So, and here Prabhupada, he makes this really nice, so he says this 5th chapter is a practical explanation of Krishna consciousness. And he says here that, I found this to be very interesting. So, as long, Prabhupada says, that a pure soul is the eternal servant of God as his fragmental part and parcel. He comes into contact with Maya, illusion, due to desire to lord it over matter and control matter. As long as he is in contact with matter, he has to execute work in terms of material necessities. This is a very important point. He has to execute work in terms of material necessities, meaning I'm always working because I think I need this, I need that, I need this, I need that. When you keep thinking you need this and you need that, where's the question of peace? When you become satisfied, then you can be peaceful. But when you think, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this, then the hankering is there. When the hankering is there, there can be no peace. So this is such a nice line. He says, as long as he's in contact, he has to execute work in terms of material necessities, which also means that he feels that he doesn't have enough. He's not like, he doesn't have sufficient. He feels like there's always some lacking. Right? Now, the moment one becomes Krishna conscious, Prabhupada says, even while one is within the jurisdiction of matter, for it is an arousing of spiritual existence by practice in the material world, the more he is freed from the clutches of matter. The more he becomes freed from the clutches of matter. The more peaceful you become. This is what it means. The more peaceful you become. So, and there Prabhupada says that everything depends on one's practical performance of duties in Krishna consciousness, which helps one controls the senses in every respect and control the influence of desire and anger. So we have desire. So sometimes there are desires that we shouldn't have. And they come. And then when those desires aren't fulfilled, what happens? We get angry. I get angry. Oh, then that anger controls us. And when we become angry, what happens? What happens when we're angry? Everybody here has no problem with anger? I'm surrounded by a lot of amazing. That's pretty amazing. Huh? But what is that? What happens when you're angry? Okay, you desire to do more things, which could be violent, or basically could be something that could be detrimental to ourselves and to others. What does that mean? That means we lost our intelligence, correct? Lost self-control. So self-control comes with intelligence, right? Because with intelligence, okay, I got to do this. It's not good for me. Okay, I'm angry. I am just going to go and, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and yell at this person. I shouldn't. But I'm just going to yell at them. I'm going to make them feel as miserable as I can. Although actually, when I make that loved one feel miserable and feel like, just go and like hurt them and say, you're like this, you're like that, And later, I'm the one who's going to feel more miserable because now I've probably, affected that relationship in a manner that I shouldn't have affected, maybe in some cases in an irreparable way. Or worse, I become either homicidal or suicidal. This is all lack of intelligence. Somebody thinks that they can go and kill other people. what what happiness are you going to get from that? What happiness are you going to get from killing others? Nothing. Oh, let me kill myself. Okay, if you think, and this is again ignorance, because you think when you kill yourself, everything's over. Everything is not over. Because you are spirit, soul, you are eternal. You will continue to live. Only your body goes away. It doesn't mean that anything else goes away. But rather, we have lost this great opportunity, a divine opportunity, with this human body, which is only available in this human form, not in any animal form of life. We have lost this we've lost this human form of life. Instead, where in this human form of life, we can actually become free from all the clutches of Maya, which means free from anxiety, depression, anger, and all the concomitant feelings. Hatred, ego. So the human form of life can benefit us like this. And when we become Krishna conscious, we can conquer over this feeling of, because actually ultimately in Bhagavad Gita it explains that ultimately everything comes from desire. And wrong desire comes when we fail to understand our actual position. When we fail to understand our actual position, when we look at everything as the enjoyers, then we just look at everything as meant for my enjoyment. But the moment we reverse that understanding, well, everything is not meant for my enjoyment, I am meant to cooperate with Krishna and the rest of his existence. And because we understand that all living beings, all living entities are also parts and parcels of Krishna, right? I may think that I belong to this particular race. I may think that I identify myself with this kind of community, society, and things like that. But when we actually understand that everyone and everything originates from Krishna, that every living being, not just every human being, every living being is a child of God, then I will also have the desire to cooperate with everybody else. And with a little intelligence, we can observe that if everything is sufficiently provided for the animals, why do we think that human society is lacking? All this lacking is coming because of greed. Prabhupada said, and he made a very statement that many people today will find it difficult to accept. There is no such thing as overpopulation. There is no such thing as overpopulation. Overpopulation is felt because a few are hoarding the resources of this world and preventing the many from receiving sufficient. The few are hoarding resources more than what they need and also exploiting nature in unnatural ways. So therefore, when we become Krishna conscious, we attain the transcendental stage, which is known as Brahma Nirvana. So Prabhupada explains that the eightfold mystic process is also contained within the process of Krishna consciousness, and this devotional service, Bhakti Yoga, which is also known as Krishna consciousness, can alone award peace to the human being. It is the highest perfection of life. And basically, this is what Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, if we were to go over, the different chapters, so this is the conclusion to chapter 5, right? So there are totally 18 chapters in Bhagavad Gita. And these 18 chapters, you can divide them into 3, right? The first 6, the middle 6, and the last 6. 3 times 6, 18. So the first 6 chapters explain primarily about yoga. And what does yoga mean? Yoga doesn't mean physical exercise. Yoga means to unite. Yuj. It comes from the root Sanskrit word called yuj, which means to unite or to connect. And yoga means to unite, to connect the individual soul with the supreme soul, with the supreme super soul, Krishna, with God. This is the process of yoga. And there are different ways in which the living entity connects. And Krishna explains all of these in the first 6 chapters. And in almost the end of every single one of those chapters, he brings it to devotional service or Krishna consciousness. Because Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, takes the elements from all these different types of yoga with the proper understanding that Krishna is ultimately the source of all existence, and that becoming a devotee of him is the best way to worship him, and it explains that. So, for instance, right, in chapter 2, right, how does Krishna conclude chapter 2? It's really nice. So he says, a person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. Right? So this is similar to what we just read today, but it's a little different, meaning that he didn't bring in Krishna. He just says that you have to give up a false sense of proprietorship. He doesn't say who is the real proprietor, because Krishna is taking this step by step. He's taking this state, So, okay. And then in the next verse, he says, that is the way for spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, he can enter into the kingdom of God. Even at the hour of death. Okay, this is chapter 2. Okay, what does chapter 3 in the end say? The chapter in the end says, Evam buddhev param buddhva samstabhyaatmatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupa durasadam. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to material senses, mind and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness. Thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Amazing verses, meaning because here I'm trying to show how the process of yoga is something that is practical. It is a tool that we are meant to use to transcend our problems. And how do we know that? Because we are spirit souls. See, this phone cannot do yoga. It's matter. It is dead matter. We are living. We can do yoga. Because we are spiritual. And we through the process of yoga, we connect with the source of our spiritual existence, which is Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead. What does Krishna say in the end of chapter 4? Right? This chapter 4 is titled as Transcendental Knowledge. What do you do with knowledge? Knowledge is not theoretical, right? Knowledge is useless unless you can apply it. And when you apply it, what does that mean? Tasmad ajnana sambhutam hritstam jnanasinatmanaha chitvainam samshayam yogam atishtottishta bharata. So, therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed with the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. Yoga is not meant for wimps. Yoga is meant for people who understand that there is something to be done. It is not meant for lazy people. It is not meant for people who just want to lie down and expect everything to happen to them in life. And yoga is also not meant for people who want to be cheated. Oh yeah, of course. There's a lot of cheating that goes on in the name of yoga, as with everything else. But one who practices yoga also understands that there is activity that one has to perform. And through that yoga, we can fight the ignorance which is causing our conditioned life and existence. So this is chapter 4. Chapter 5 we just read. Krishna explains that A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from all material miseries. Meaning now he has understood who Krishna is. After attaining knowledge, understanding he's transcendental, now he understands, well, not only am I transcendental, I'm meant to connect with Krishna, I'm meant to become his devotee. He is the Supreme Lord. Now, in the next chapter, what are we going to see? In the next chapter, which is called Dhyana Yoga, which is the process of, so this Dhyana Yoga, elements of that Dhyana Yoga is what goes on in the name of yoga today in society. Meaning such as performing some breathing exercises, stretching the body, and things like that. And people do feel some peace. But the Dhyana Yoga is ultimately meant to meditate. See, now that we understand that Krishna is the supreme benefactor, he is the supreme Lord of all beings, we have to meditate upon him. When we meditate, what does that meditation mean? And the wrong understanding of meditation is that meditation must only happen when one is sitting like this. No, there is active meditation. A mother who cares for her child is always meditating on the child's welfare. But she's not sitting in a corner of the house. She's very active. She's doing different things for her child's welfare. And she's imbued with love. When love develops in the heart, there is automatic meditation. So, this automatic meditation is what happens in Bhakti Yoga. It is what is called devotional service. Those who do not understand that they have to perform devotional service artificially have to engage in the process of Dhyana Yoga, where they have to individually attempt to meditate. But one who understands that this meditation is actually something natural. We do it in our day-to-day lives. We meditate upon so many things that we're not supposed to meditate on. Therefore, we struggle. But the actual person to be meditated upon is Krishna. So, in chapter 6, we get some of those tools, right? For instance, Krishna says, in chapter 6, he says, Udaret atmanatmanam natmanam avasadhyet atmaiva hyatmano bandhur atmaiva ripuratmanaha. Oh, I have to meditate. That means my mind. Anybody who talks about meditation says, oh my God, my mind. It goes here, it goes there. Krishna says, one must deliver himself with the help of his mind, not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and the enemy as well. Next verse. Bandhur atmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmana jitaha anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. Why? Because the mind automatically engages in the meditation. It becomes the best of friends. There is no external activity to try to meditate with the mind. The mind does it automatically. It becomes the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. People think that they have enemies outside. No, the enemy is within. It's called the mind. And so these are really, and then there's some other amazing verses here. For instance, okay, we have to practice yoga, right? Okay, how do I do yoga? Well, nasti asnastastu yogosti na chaikantam ashnataha na chati swapnashilasya jagrato naiva charjuna. There is no possibility of one becoming a yogi, O Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. Yukta ahara viharasya yukta chetasya karmasu yukta swapnava bodhasya yogo bhavati dukkha. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga process, the yoga system. So, these tools are employed in devotional service. We understand these things. We employ them in Bhakti Yoga. And through this, we make our life better. We perfect ourselves. So Bhagavad Gita is this amazing text where all this knowledge is contained. And I can keep going on. I actually wanted to briefly kind of like touch upon all, explain the three categories of the 18 chapters. But I'll stop here. We're running out of time. We can sit all day and talk about Bhagavad Gita, and still it won't be enough. Well, there won't be sufficient time. So I'll stop here. If there are any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. Yes. Yeah, it's on.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so in the purport, Prabhupada says that the cause of our suffering is the desire to enjoy.
Oh, one
matter.
second. Can everyone hear the question? No. Could the volume be adjusted?
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
No. Yeah, you're adjusting the monitor. It's called the monitor. The monitor. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, so Prabhupada mentions that the reason why we're suffering is because we have a desire to enjoy matter.
Correct.
But then I think in the second chapter, Prabhupada also says that the cause of our suffering is because we forget Krishna. He says that many times. So it's like which one causes the other? It's like a
Both.
chicken egg, the philosophy. So which one, like, is it that?
When we forget Krishna, we think we want a lot over material nature. It is not that, actually people think, people who are neophytes, they think that matter is the problem. So what they try to do is they go and sit in a cave. They think, oh, this is all the problem, so I have to renounce everything. And sometimes people come to Krishna consciousness, look at monks like us, and they think, my God, these people are just going to tell me to leave everything and just sit under a tree or something. Well, we ourselves don't sit under the tree. So that is an immature understanding, that to blame matter as the cause of our problems. Oh, it's that matter. It's that iPhone. It's that neighbor. It's that car. It's this. It's that. It's like I'm surrounded by too many beautiful women. They're the problem, not me. And all this this is nonsense. Matter is not the problem. It is we who are the problem, because it is our perception is the problem. You surround a deer with so many beautiful women. The deer is going to look, where's the grass? That's all. Because its perception is different. It doesn't look, and you can surround yourself with so many female deer, and hopefully you're not aroused. Otherwise something is strange, So the point is the perception. And Krishna is making that point again and again and again in Bhagavad Gita. Now, at the same time, while practicing yoga, it can take some time to develop that perception. And so therefore some restraint is good, but not restraint to the extent where it is impractical and it is unsustainable. And actually when you try to restrain too much, then that is a sign of aversion. Aversion is just the flip side of attachment. When you're very averse to something, that is another form of attachment. And that also causes frustration. So ultimately the point is that when we forget Krishna, we think that we're the enjoyer. And then we swing like a pendulum between aversion and attachment. Okay, I like ice cream, so I eat like anything. Then I go cold turkey on ice cream and go the other way. And then you swing right back. And then you jump right into it like a person who's starving, and then it's even worse than what it was. And that, so basically trying to enjoy material nature is forgetfulness of Krishna. When we remember Krishna, we automatically do not lord over material nature. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the lecture. Actually, I have two questions.
One only.
Okay.
Choose one. I have to give.
Okay.
If nobody else asks, then I'll. Yeah.
Okay. So the first question is what is a difference between desiring and to be greedy?
What is the difference between desiring and greedy?
Yeah.
Need. Need is the difference.
Okay.
Now, when one is lacking knowledge, one needs everything. Mm-hmm. So, when it's the same thing. When we read Bhagavad Gita, we start to understand what actually our needs are. we start to understand that it is not needed for me to become the Lord and Master of everything I see. Although I may have thought that that is my need. My need is to, So when we understand what our need is, then automatically we do not become greedy. When we don't understand what our needs are, either we don't, we actually feel, what do you see? We might ignore something completely, or we might go to the other extent of becoming very greedy. So need is the difference between greed and what could be termed as regular regular natural desire. Animals, you see, for instance, a tiger might kill a deer, but it will store it on a tree, and it will eat that deer, over a few days. Now, does it have the power and ability to butcher and slaughter so many deer? Yes. Does the elephant have the capability? Oh, yes. The elephant can cause carnage. And if you want, you can see videos, elephant causing, rampage in India when they go mad, then, because they were not treated well, whatever. And then they just go and pound people to pulp on the street. It's terrible. And it takes a lot to kill it, because it's a strong, big animal with thick skin. So, but the elephant doesn't do it. The elephant could, but the elephant doesn't do it. Because, but humans, we are given that independence, because by distinguishing between that, we can choose whether to love Krishna or to not love Krishna. This is why only in the human form of life do we generate karma. Animals don't generate karma. They don't generate karma, because they're just acting according to instinct, which is basically pre-programmed. There can be difference between one dog and another dog, but there's some common characteristics. That is just how they are. And humans, you will see one fellow who lives like a pig, another fellow who lives like donkey, another fellow who lives like very civilized person. You will see all of that. You will see almost every species in a human being. That is because we have this ability. Because the human form of life is the closest that it gets to the spirit soul's actual spiritual nature. Anyways, Hare Krishna. That was a long answer for one question. But okay, one more question. Yes, please.
Hare Krishna. What do you think of the desire to be a mother? Is this not another source of attachment?
So, yes, in one sense it is a source of attachment, but again, like everything else, like for instance, the desire to eat can also be a source of attachment, is it not? Yeah, at least for me, Now, the point is, how do we engage that desire? There is a way to become a mother where one is providing for one's children because this is desiring to become a mother is another normal, natural course of how life in this world has been created by God, right? And it is without those kind of desires, procreation, future generation, and things like that will not happen. Now, but in the human form of life, unlike animals, we don't just desire to have, offsprings, but in the human form of life, we have those offsprings. But even while we are bringing them, we pray for, a saintly and divine offspring, and then after that baby is born, we protect and nurture it and try to give it the best opportunity to perform Krishna consciousness and become responsible and actually liberated and become an asset to this world, not a burden. Actually, doing so, Prabhupada has also said this many times, is actually some of the best forms of preaching. Because one of the best, actually the best form of preaching is to practice and follow oneself. And to be able to teach that, to be able to transfer that to one's children, making them responsible, people in this world, the next generation. This is the best way to bless this world. And so then automatically the mother's love towards the child and to be a mother becomes transcendental. It becomes one that is Krishna conscious. Because the underlying theme is it's not based on the body, it's based on the soul. But not that the bodily needs are neglected. So this is yoga. Believe it or not, this is yoga. So, yeah. Is that okay?
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'll stop here. Thank you very much. So now we will chant for 10 times on the